Stacey. Welcome to the kitchen of my old Kentucky home. Today we're going to be cooking up some recipes that are inspired by regions in Kentucky outside of Louisville. The first one is a Green River style catfish, and we're going to complement that with a side of greens. And Jessica is going to be concocting a bourbon cocktail that's inspired by one of Kentucky's natural wonders. Let's go. For our collard greens, we're going to need 2 pounds of greens, half a cup of chopped onion, a third a cup of bacon grease or lard, a quarter cup of brown sugar, and a quarter cup of rice vinegar. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is add to our stock pot about a third a cup of bacon grease. It doesn't have to be real specific. Or if you don't have bacon grease and just have the bacon or a ham hock, you can throw that in. I like to use the bacon grease, one, because I always have it on hand. I keep a little jar in the fridge at all times. And two, because the next thing I'm going to do with this. So I'm going to melt this down. What I like to do is kind of blanch my greens first before I add the water to cook them down. I don't know what it is about it. Maybe it starts an early caramelization or something, but just kind of the method that I like to do. So I'm going to take my greens and throw them in the bacon grease. You can hear that sizzle. And then I just like to put the lid on for a second and kind of initially get those kind of cooked down just a bit. As I said, I'm using collard greens, but you can use mustard greens, kale greens, Swiss chard, all basically using the same recipe. In fact, my grandmothers went out in the yard and picked dandelion greens, believe it or not. But collards are one of my favorites because they're big and leafy and they just hold up really well. All right, so that should be enough to kind of cook those down a bit. Want to make sure that you're not scorching the bottom. I keep it on low most of the time. Okay, and to this, we're going to add our half a cup of chopped onion. You do not add this before the greens in your bacon grease because you don't want them caramelized. You just want them to cook down in the pop liquor of this. And then we're going to add brown sugar. Just kind of cuts the vinegar that I'm going to get ready to put in. It's a nice balance. And growing up, we always had a table, we still do, have a table of vinegar on the table with our greens, but I go on and add this rice vinegar to the batch as it's cooking down, and you can add that to taste. And then, of course, you're going to add just some salt and pepper, again, to taste. And I've got a salt over here. And then finally, you're going to cover the greens with water. And we're just going to stir this up a lot more off camera. We're just going to put the lid on that, and we're going to just let this cook down for about a half an hour. So while we do that, let's make some catfish. Well, now that our collard greens are cooking down, here are the ingredients we'll need for our catfish. 2 fillets, a quarter cup of buttermilk, a half a cup of cornmeal, a quarter teaspoon of garlic powder, a half a teaspoon of fresh ground black pepper, and an ample amount of shortening or lard. Our catfish fillets have been soaking in buttermilk for the last hour in the refrigerator, and now we're ready to make the coating for the fish. With the buttermilk, you can also use regular milk or water. You just need a moisture. And the reason you do this is because catfish, it's a mild flavor, but it can be a little fishy. So the soaking really helps eliminate some of that fishy taste. So we've got our cornmeal, and we're just going to mix our garlic and our cracked pepper. And this makes it a signature, the quote, Green River style. Is you see a lot of that black and yellow, that cracked pepper really comes through on the fish when they come out of the fryer. So we're just going to mix that around with a fork. We're gonna put it on our dredging plate. You can use another pan this size if you need to. See how you can see a lot of that pepper? I might even add more when I get it to the skillet. Okay, and we're just gonna take our catfish, let the excess buttermilk drop off, and simply dredge it. I'm just gonna leave him right on this plate because I've got enough room to dredge this other guy. Just get him good and coated. I don't know why I think they're he, but I do. And now that, and you can even do a little more on the top if you want. Now I've got these coated, we're ready to take them to the grease. All right, let's fry some catfish. We've started with a cast iron skillet, and I've melted down the shortening into this, or you can use lard, like I said. A very popular brand for us Southerners is Crisco. You can also just use vegetable oil if you have that on hand, and you're gonna get it to a hot temperature of 350 degrees. And we're gonna put in our fish fillets. Oh, I didn't mention, the reason I just said ample amount of shortening or lard is because you just really want to fill up your pan to about an inch and a half once it melts, and I don't know how big your pan is, so whatever you need for that. You really only want to do 2, 3 at a time. This recipe can be doubled, quadrupled if you're having a big fish fry, but you don't want to crowd your fish. So we're going to let those cook about 2 to 3 minutes aside. One thing we don't want is to overcook them and it makes them rubbery. And like I said, the real dominant factor in the Green River style catfish is a lot of cracked pepper. I don't feel like we had enough that made it to our fish, so I'm going to add a little more on top. You can also salt these while you're cooking as well. Salt them afterwards too. And you can kind of tell what's going on by the amount of bubbling, sizzling that's still going on. It's still browning those on the bottom so they're not ready to turn. Also, sometimes you can the fish kind of appear like they're floating in the grease when they are ready as well. You can flip with a fish turner, or we're just going to use these handy tongs and hope that it doesn't fall apart. I don't know if you can see this on camera, but you can I can see the sides of this starting to get the exact golden brown color that my grandmothers used to get this fish to. So I'm just kind of check it without flipping it. Oh yeah, I like the way that looks. So I'm gonna flip this guy over. That's perfect golden color. We'll let this guy cook a little longer since we put him in last. His bottom. Oh, also that's that perfect golden brown color. While these are cooking, I'll tell you a little bit more about the Green River style. It was simply cornmeal and cracked pepper. Other people have added different spices over the years. We added a little garlic pepper, or garlic powder, excuse me. I've seen cayenne added to the recipe to kind of spice it up, make it a little more Creole or Cajun style. Some people add flour, but I like to go just straight up cornmeal. So we'll let these cook just a little bit more and take them off the stove. Okay, this catfish looks like it's come to the perfect color. And I've already got this prepared wire cooling rack with some paper towels under it. I sprayed it with a little grease as well. We just want to drain off the excess grease. We want this to be dry and not real greasy when we serve it. So we're just going to let these guys dry out a little bit, cool off before we plate them. Well, our fish have fried, our collard greens have cooked down. Let's go make a drink.
We're having a Kentucky River themed episode of Bourbon and Biscuits today, so I'm going to make a cocktail called a Moonbow. This is a cocktail from Joy Perrine's classic cookbook, and it's named for the natural phenomenon that takes place at Cumberland Falls in Corbin, Kentucky, where around a full moon you can see in the mist from the waterfall essentially what's a nighttime rainbow. So today we're going to use bullet bourbon, ginger ale, lime juice, orange juice, and cranberry juice. We're gonna add to a cocktail shaker with ice our 2 ounces of bourbon, and we're gonna add our fresh squeezed juices. So that's going to be our tablespoon of lime juice and a tablespoon of orange juice. And you always want to shake fresh squeezed juices. They say shake it to wake it. So give that a good shake. Okay, we're gonna strain this into our cocktail glass. And then we're gonna top it with 2 ounces of ginger ale, and now we're gonna add our cranberry juice. And there you've got it. It's a Moonbow.
So Jessica, you talked about this being our river tribute episode,
Right.
right? What I really didn't talk about is specifically why catfish, though, for the recipe. So I wanted to share that. Apparently, catfish was really abundant all over the South years and years ago, before grocery stores. So you can imagine, as a free commodity, they were bottom feeders. It was just readily available, especially in Kentucky, because not just the Ohio River that borders it and all our Great Lakes, but we apparently have more streams and ponds and shoreline than any other place in the United States after Florida.
Oh, no kidding.
So that was a real abundance of catfish. And apparently they didn't have that up north, and they kind of frowned on that back in the day.
So while you were kind of on the more functional side of all of our rivers and the convenience and abundance that provided, I went with kind of a beautiful natural element, something that people like to go visit, and that's at Cumberland Falls, as I said, which we like to call the Niagara of the South. And you can actually plan on going once a month during the full moon to experience this regularly. It's only one of 2 places in the world where you can do that.
Amazing.
Yeah,
in
and
Kentucky.
actually, honestly, I've never been to experience it.
I haven't either.
So I kind of think we should take that 3-hour drive and maybe go see it.
I think road trip is in order.
All right.
You
I'll bring the cocktails.
I'll catch the fish. And speaking of fish, one of the things that we didn't show was a secret little whiskey tartar sauce recipe that I whipped up and added some Kentucky bourbon into. So that'll be online as well.
And we'll see you here next time on Bourbon
And biscuits.
Cheers.
Cheers.